The only discussion I ever see about Demon Slayer nowadays is that it's such a mid-anime that gets completely carried by its animation. Yet Demon Slayer is one of the most recognizable animes of the new generation and was a global phenomenon at the height of its popularity. So, which one is it? The main argument I've seen is that Demon Slayer has nothing that stands out about it except for its high quality animation. But surely there's more to Demon Slayer's popularity and success than that, and I think there's a reason why it became such a global phenomenon, especially in Japan. I think we need to take a look at Demon Slayer's publication history and anime production to see where exactly did things go right for it. Demon Slayer became a serialized manga in the same way that other manga get their start, weekly or monthly magazines in Japan. After the author Koyoharu Gotoge failed to get their one-shot Hainiwa no Zigzag serialized into Weekly Shonen Jump, Tatsuhiko Katayama, Gotoge's first editor, suggested creating a manga with an easy-to-understand theme. They decided to take a look back at one of Gotoge's older one-shots, Kagarigari, because of its recognizable concepts like swords and demons that didn't need to be explained to a Japanese audience. This originally wasn't accepted for a series at the time because, at least in the editor's eyes, the story was too dark and gloomy while also lacking a lot of comedy relief. In all honesty, I do think they could have made the original Kagarigari concept work if they took it to a seinen publisher instead, because it has very similar ideas to Tokyo Ghoul. The conflict of Kagarigari starts when a demon enters Tamayo's territory, a character that would later become part of the regular Demon Slayer canon. They don't say his name, but this guy that clearly is the basis for Muzan and Tamayo team up together to try and take down this demon, and there's a conversation between the three about how demons have to be in hiding from the human world and discussions on territory, which circles back to the similarities to Tokyo Ghoul I had mentioned, just taking place in a more rural Japan setting. The demons even use their heightened sense of smell to hunt and ascertain the current situation, which also just screams Tokyo Ghoul to me. Eventually, when it looks grim for Tamayo and Muzan, a young blind one-armed swordsman arrives and slices the demon's head clean off before going off into the distance. The one-shot actually gives a lot of backstory and information that would eventually be used for Demon Slayer, like the test to become a hunter, the concept of slicing off heads to defeat demons, and the crows telling hunters where to find their next target. So how exactly were they able to get this concept reworked to get picked up by Weekly Shonen Jump and thus starting Demon Slayer's slow but sure progress into popularity? Katayama discussed with Gotoge that switching out the protagonist for a brighter, normal character would work out better for the series. So, after taking in some influence from works like Naruto, Bleach, and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Demon Slayer finally came into serialization on February 16th, 2016. Now, something that a lot of Americans have a hard time believing is that Demon Slayer is one of the most popular anime manga of all time, especially because, at least in America, while Demon Slayer is a mainstream anime, it certainly doesn't have a legacy like the big three, for example. So what exactly happened? How did Demon Slayer become so popular? Demon Slayer's growth, as I mentioned before, was in fact a steady one. The editor-in-chief of Weekly Shonen Jump, Hiroyuki Nakano, stated that Demon Slayer's popularity started going up only after the first season of the anime had finished, which was in September 2019, 3 years after the manga had started its publication. Nakano had said that a large number of people watched the series through streaming services after it ended, rather than watching it weekly as it updated. I guess some experiences are universal wherever you go, because I know a lot of people in America that like to do this as well. Nakano had also stated how it's more difficult for works to become popular while they are running in the magazine, and that Demon Slayer again did not become a major hit until 2019, which hinged on word of mouth generated after the anime's run, while also stating how the anime introduced a lot of people to manga and Jump as well. Interestingly enough, when the manga had finished, another mangaka gave their congratulations to Gotoge. Gege Akatami, the creator of Jujutsu Kaisen, had said how Demon Slayer had created many new manga fans. So, did the anime, carried by its animation, suddenly create all these fans of Demon Slayer, Shonen Jump, and manga in general? What exactly about the anime made Demon Slayer a hit? At a glance, what I've said might sound like carried by animation, but let's take a deeper look just to be safe. Now, to supplement Nakano's original observation that Demon Slayer started seeing more popularity after season 1 of the anime, it's important to note that Yuma Takahashi, the director of the Demon Slayer anime, specifically said that I don't think it was just the anime that caused it to become popular. According to Takahashi, the series had 3 main factors for its success: the power of the original work, the attitude towards adapting it into an anime, and the environment. By the power of the original work, Takahashi basically means that while people learned about the manga through the anime, that alone is not enough to generate a hit, and that the original source material must also be good in order to continue the success of both parties. Takahashi also continued to say that the manga has a lot of various charms by mixing traditional and innovative elements. The story is a classic tale about a boy's growth, meeting friends, and growing stronger together. He also mentioned how the characters, even the villains, are well developed, so it's not necessarily a one-to-one good versus evil story, but has layers to it. and I think I can agree that a lot of Demon Slayer's appeal comes from this. So, remember when I said earlier that Gotoge took influence from Bleach, Naruto, and JoJo's? Incorporating these elements on top of following editor Katayama's advice about changing the main character really paid off for Demon Slayer. Katayama talked about the scene where Tanjiro defeats the hand demon, for example, and that after defeating him, there's a scene where Tanjiro holds his hand, praying that he would never turn into a demon again. When I first heard of that scene, I thought there was no other main character quite like Tanjiro, and I got goosebumps. The enemy too has experienced his own sadness, and in squeezing his hand, Tanjiro shows mercy. I remember saying, no wonder that enemy is all hands, everything's connected. That's amazing, isn't it? The kindness that Tanjiro shows when fighting his enemies is similar to that of Naruto and Jonathan Joestar. Even in the face of adversities and injustices they might face, Naruto and Jonathan show mercy, compassion, and kindness to their enemies. Gotoge took these elements from these characters and reworked them into a new character to fit this particular setting, adding dimension to the enemies in Demon Slayer, as well as Tanjiro's willingness to do what's right while also feeling sympathy for these demons. And so when people complain that Tanjiro is too unrealistically kind, I want people to think about the source material that helped inspire him. I don't understand why Tanjiro being sympathetic to the demons gets him flack, yet Jonathan feeling sympathy for Bruford after their intense battle doesn't warrant the same reaction. Even then, I think saying he is unrealistically kind is a poor mischaracterization of his character. He clearly has hatred for Muzan and Akaza after everything they've done, but especially when Hantengu tries to say that the Demon Slayers are cruel for picking on someone weak, Tanjiro can smell the hypocrisy and disingenuousness from a mile away and just gets even more mad. He has sympathy for his enemies when their more humane side reveals themselves, but isn't just blindly kind to anyone he faces. And Katayama especially loves the character of Tanjiro because of his kindness. Granted, even Gotoge did say that they were worried that Tanjiro was too normal of a character and that they weren't interesting enough, but Katayama insisted that Tanjiro was fine the way he is. He shares a lot of the same struggles that other shonen protagonists have about wanting to become stronger to protect the ones close to him. His conflict has complexity because Nezuko is also a demon, so it's not like he can outrightly say that all demons are evil, especially when he relies on the help of Tamayo as well. And Katayama believes how this conflict plays out for Tanjiro in search for a cure for Nezuko while fighting demons along the way is an incredibly unique take on a story. And I have to agree with him on that, and I think that's a really underappreciated part of the plot of Demon Slayer. Quick side note, if anyone was interested in what the Bleach influence on Demon Slayer was, Gotoge mentioned that the Gote 13 in Bleach came up a lot in meetings with their editors, so I'm assuming the Hashira have a little something to do with that. Another thing that Demon Slayer executes really well is the writing and dialogue especially. Katayama mentioned that the dialogue is the part of the story that he'd like people to be aware of the most, and remarked that the scene with Giyu yelling at Tanjiro about lowering his defenses was incredibly impactful to him. For myself, I think that there are a lot of lines that have some kind of impact like that in Demon Slayer. Set Your Heart Ablaze by Rengoku is one of the main ones I can think of, but going back to Tanjiro's convictions, struggles, and emotions, I think his lines to Muzan and Akaza are incredibly impactful as well. Something about dialogue and writing that I think is worth mentioning too is that a lot of the times the translation doesn't quite do the work justice. For example, I found this interview later on while I was editing, and while the line here says, "Never leave yourself so defenseless in front of an enemy," the Japanese line was translated here as, "Don't let others have the power of life and death." Now, I don't speak Japanese myself, so I don't want to get too hung up on this topic without better understanding, but it is a shame that we can't appreciate something as much because we don't speak the original language. Even if you try to argue that Demon Slayer is too basic, that actually works to its advantage because it helps span the appeal across multiple generations. According to an internet poll done in 2020 by Oricon Monitor Research, a lot of respondents of the survey had mentioned that they were able to treasure and connect with their families and even different generations at the workplace over Demon Slayer. A woman in her 30s remarked that when going to karaoke with people of different age groups, everyone is able to bond over the theme songs Gorenge and Homura. A woman in her 50s said that she was having more conversations with people in her family and at work, and a man in his 60s says that he loves talking to Demon Slayer fans. For an industry that really seems to care about age and gender demographics by separating into shonen, seinen, josei, and shoujo, Demon Slayer really breaks down a lot of those barriers with its accessible quality. And that's something that Katayama envisioned about Demon Slayer. They remarked that Demon Slayer is hyper mainstream. It strongly captures human nature. Its humans overcome adversity, grow, and fight villains who deserve to be fought against. It's both mainstream and unique. It's a great work of entertainment that anyone who likes manga can enjoy, regardless of age or gender. I want it to be just that. And if this action shonen formula is being done well within its key components, what exactly is the problem here? And another thing to consider is that when the first season of the anime ended, people went back to read the manga, like Nakano had said, but people stuck with it. Like Takahashi said, the original work also needs to be good in order to generate this kind of hype and popularity. If the manga suddenly started struggling with its story down the line, then the manga obviously wouldn't keep up in popularity, like many other mangas I know that fell off. And I don't even think Demon Slayer is that basic, to be honest. It just borrows influences from other shonen manga just about as much as any other shonen does. So let's talk about the other thing that Takahashi had mentioned, the attitude when adapting this work into an anime. Takahashi insists that because of the foundation laid out by the original work, the studio was able to apply their respective techniques in the animation and create a wonderful show. In a separate interview with Anime News Network, Takahashi talked about how the detailed artwork of Gotoge with its distinct facial expression and striking visual choices were the biggest challenge in bringing it into motion. If you look at Gotoge's art throughout the fight scenes of the manga especially, it's incredibly dynamic and, like he said, animating these would definitely take a lot of effort. The high quality of the animation is due to Ufotable's care, attention, and experience in the anime industry. Takahashi mentioned that many of the staff have been working 5 to 10 years, so they were just pushing themselves even further with their craft, and he ultimately stated that they weren't necessarily making the best anime ever, but to make the best version of Kimetsu no Yaiba ever. They even talk about how, for example, the water breathing technique is mostly done by hand, and Takahashi proudly stated that no one in the business is better at hand-drawn techniques like this than Ufotable. Gotoge trusted Ufotable a lot and rarely requested changes, but rather just gave their input to, again, create the best version of Kimetsu no Yaiba as possible. Even when it comes to the music, it's done by the brilliant minds of Yuki Kajira and Go Shina, who worked on other Ufotable projects. Kajira worked on Fate Zero and Garden of Sinners, while Go Shina worked on God Eater. And because of their history with Ufotable, the animation team insisted on working with them specifically because they had such a trusting relationship together from working in the past. Even Gundam's creator, Yoshiyuki Tomino, had remarked that Demon Slayer and Ufotable's dedication to the franchise is something that he genuinely envies. According to him, the collective effort of the team of animators, musicians, and voice actors, for example, all did a great job. And that's what I'm talking about. There's so much trust, thought out planning, and care being put into the production process of making Demon Slayer that it's incredibly reductive to say that it's being carried by the animation. It's got so much going for it. Everything about the anime is being brought to the highest quality imaginable, and it's being done on a story with great characters, depth, and execution in its ideas. Even one of the highest rated anime episodes of 2024 was the last episode of the Hashira training arc. That's telling me that Demon Slayer's quality is only going up as time goes on. An anime only carried by animation can't achieve as much as Demon Slayer has. I mean, just look at how many awards the anime's been nominated for or won. Forgive the wonky scrolling, but I literally couldn't take a screenshot or import a rolling screenshot because the file was literally too long. Not to mention, the manga has also won its own set of awards, including the Osamu Tezuka Cultural Special Prize for creating a social phenomenon. Another quick side note, if anyone was curious about what Takahashi meant by the environment contributing to Demon Slayer's success, he was mainly talking about how streaming services help the anime steadily gain viewers over time. That being said, do you guys understand how popular Demon Slayer actually is? Across the world, it's certainly popular, definitely one that most people have heard of, but in Japan, Demon Slayer is truly a cultural phenomenon, and I don't think it can be overstated just how popular it is over there. For example, the Red Cross in the Tokushima Prefecture saw a jump from 464 donations to 1,700 donations from April 2021 to May 2021. And this was during the pandemic, mind you. But many people attribute the Demon Slayer related advertising and their promise to hand out a free Mugen Train poster as to why so many more people decided to donate blood that month. And that's not all. According to a 2020 poll conducted by education and publishing company Benesse, which asked 7,661 3rd to 6th grade Japanese children who they looked up to, Tanjiro Kamado ranked first on the top 10 most admired people, which placed the children's mothers, teachers, and fathers on 2nd, 4th, and 5th place respectively, with the remaining spots occupied by other Demon Slayer characters. I guess it was worth it to make Agarigari more kid-friendly, because the grip that this anime has on the younger generation especially is absolutely insane. And I'm sure Gotoge's initial worries about Tanjiro not being an interesting enough character are certainly put to rest. And I think it's great that so many kids look up to a character like Tanjiro that's so noble anyway. And I think to many young people of this generation, Demon Slayer is basically their Dragon Ball. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if future manga writers say that they were inspired by Demon Slayer to create manga. Very much how Akira Toriyama inspired the writers of the Big Three, I think Gotoge is going to inspire future generations as well. Even beyond that, Demon Slayer is the 9th best-selling manga of all time with over 150 million copies sold. It has beaten out Attack on Titan, Bleach, Baki the Grappler, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, all while being half as long as most of these series. Even other manga authors recognize recognize the importance and significance of Demon Slayer in the industry. Eiichiro Oda, the creator of One Piece, stated that at Jump, Demon Slayer was really amazing, and I enjoyed how it was able to save the feelings of so many people. Absolutely superb work. This is how I want manga to be. It touched me somehow. Yusuke Murata, the artist of One Punch Man's manga, remarked that its contribution to the industry as a whole is immeasurable. Even politicians were trying to use Demon Slayer's iconography and designs for their logos because they knew just how many people would recognize and remember it. So again, we asked this question. Is Demon Slayer just a mid-anime that gets carried by the animation? While I do believe there's some merit to this argument in that the anime definitely propelled its popularity, I think it's incredibly reductive to say that it gets carried by the animation. Demon Slayer becoming the phenomenon that it is, while it does have some factors of luck, just came from an artist and an animation studio that wanted to put out the best type of work possible in the series. Even looking at Kagaregari compared to the current Demon Slayer art, Koyoharu Gotake genuinely improved so much on their art style and storytelling, and I think that alone deserves some kind of recognition. Katayama even mentioned how much of a hard worker Gotake is and just continuously draws, and that is certainly reflected in the manga as time goes on. Adding on top of that the fun and mostly tasteful humor that Demon Slayer brings to the table, while also delivering on action, suspense, and depth, Demon Slayer truly deserves its popularity, and by no means only because of animation. In fact, I would be hard-pressed to find anything about Demon Slayer that I didn't like. The only thing I can think of is that Demon Slayer could have used a little bit more time to world build and develop its characters, but even that gets exchanged for a tight, fast-paced story, so I think it's well worth the sacrifice. I think a lot of the Demon Slayer hate is purely because the anime is popular and doesn't deserve it, but as we can see, there's so much about the anime and manga that makes it stand out from the crowd, and I can't wait to see the anime's conclusion in the near future. Thank you so much guys for listening to me yap about Demon Slayer. If you liked the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to know when new videos come out. Maybe leave a comment talking about if you think that Demon Slayer is overhated or if you think it's justified. But thank you guys for watching. Let me know if there's any other topics you're interested in me talking about, and I'll see you guys next time.